Hello, everyone. You are listening to the C Squared podcast with Corey and Curtis. Today, we are back with Ben Umanov, Metal Sucks band manager. He is a guy of, many experiences, long time career in metal. He's going to be doing a deep dive into band management and also a bit of talk on ads today. So, first, I just want to say, welcome back. We're glad to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me. I feel old when introduced as a long-time career, but I guess I have made it to that point.
Hey, you know what? For all anybody knows, you could have started your career when you were 12.
I
Hey,
mean, I started playing in bands around that time, so
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
in a way,
See,
I did.
so you could have a 20-year career in your early 30s at that point. So,
Totally. So I'm like, there are 3 decades in the music business here, people.
yeah. So, wealth of knowledge. So, everybody should kick back and pay attention. So last time we had you on here, we let everybody know your career and everything that you've been working on and what you've done. But we definitely want to touch base more on the band management side. You manage 2 bands, correct?
Let's call it 2.5.
Two and a half.
Not because it's half a band, but because my work for the third band is not like really a full-time endeavor. But it's Rivers of Nile, Black Crown Initiate, and a doom trio from Canada called Volur, Volur.
Awesome. And so just to get started, how did you get started as a band manager? What really attracted you to it?
Well, I'd been in the music industry working around managers, I guess you could say, for a while. And one of my first jobs was kind of a split position where I was basically an assistant to 2 different people, one of whom owned a small record label and operated a recording studio, and one of whom was a manager. He mostly managed producers and mixers, but did have some bands. And, I guess that was kind of my first direct exposure to it, I guess you could say, other than dealing with managers previously. But later on, I mean, I think I just wanted to help bands. I wanted to be in the process. I think I got into it the same reason that I think a lot of folks do, which is you discover a cool band that you're really passionate about. And it's like, fuck, this band is so good. Like, how do I help them? Like, how do I use all my connections to make this band the biggest band in the world?
I know that feeling.
And so I just jumped into it, not really fully knowing what I was doing, but that's okay. That's how we all start. And just continued into it from there, learning as I went.
That is awesome. And as you were learning, I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about what a band manager does and does not do. And not a lot of people really fully understand the role. I don't even fully understand the role and I'm doing it. So so in your mind, what are the things that band managers do and then also do not do, what they can't do or what they shouldn't be doing?
A band manager's job, in the most simple way to explain it, is to be the go-between between the band members and everyone else in the music industry. So the band members should not really be dealing with booking agents, with publicists, with record label people, with photographers, video people. I mean, obviously there are exceptions where particularly on the creative side, if a band member wants to explain their creative vision for a music video to a director, like, I don't need to be parlaying that conversation. They should just talk directly. And there are certain examples like that. But for the most part, the manager is the go-between. The manager is the person that takes creative language and ideas coming from the band and translates them into the business world. It's like this, there's like this Dr. Seuss machine with, like chemicals and balls like going all over the place. And you're like, bloop, 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 bloop. And it comes in from the band and goes back out to the business world. And then it's also our job to do the other thing in reverse, take the stuff that's coming from the business world, analyze it with a mindset of, does this work for the band? Yes or no? What can we change? Can we make it better? And then bring it back to the band and put them in the best possible position for success based on your experience and your knowledge.
And then, so I know that the go between role for the business and the band. But one thing I've noticed that some bands do, and it's kind of an old habit, and I want your thoughts on it, where the manager is actually the one responding to fans as well. And I personally am not a fan of that kind of wall between the fans and the band. But what are your thoughts on that kind of a relationship where it's that person's not only going in between the band and the business side, but also the band and the fans?
I think it's always great if a band member or members can be the people to do that.
Mhm.
That's ideal. And particularly early on when there's not such a large volume of communications, I think that's great. Some band members don't necessarily have that skill though. They're not on social media as much. They're maybe just not very communicative, and that they might need somebody to step in. And once you get to a certain level, it's just impossible, I think, to keep up with all the, like even the bands at the level that I manage get, it can be overwhelming sometimes, the amount of stuff
Mhm.
that comes in. Now I don't typically do that for my bands. They do it themselves, which is great. But I guess to answer your question, I think it's absolutely best if bands can handle their own interactions with fans. It really, I think fans just, they want to know they're interacting with the band. It feels good to be
Mhm.
validated.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I do help my guys a little bit just because their English isn't super great. So I will do some translating. But yeah, beyond that, it's pretty much all them on the interaction level. But I know Curtis's face right now. He's got what I call follow-up
Well,
face.
I'm well. There's a couple things. Well, number one, before we get off the management topic, because I know we
Mhm.
also want to get into ads, I kind of want to know how you kind of manage the different roles personally that you have, because you got Metal Sucks, you got Blast Beat, you got the three different bands. Obviously, you got kids on top of all that. So how does Ben Umanov kind of like separate all the different jobs throughout the day? Because you got a lot on your plate and it's a lot to get done.
Yeah, I mean, I wake up and I sit down at my desk and I just attack the day the best I can. I take a quick look at my email box and see what's there. If there's anything urgent, I'll handle that first. Typically, I will try to write some content sort of, on the earlier side. First thing, if possible, if there's anything urgent, I'll take care of it and then get to writing some content for Metal Sucks. Because there's maybe some things I didn't get to from the day before, or some things that came out of Europe before we were even awake.
Mhm.
And I like to kind of, for me at this point, that kind of writing is second nature. I can just sit down and shit out 300 words without any effort, and make
Mhm.
it hopefully funny and entertaining. Probably I fail at that. Certainly I do fail at that sometimes, but but anyway, point being, it's easy for me to just sit down. I've just done it so much. Like I think we're approaching 50,000 posts on Metal Sucks. I don't know how many of those I wrote, 20,000 something, so it's just easy to just sit down and knock that out. And then I can approach the day with a more creative mindset. Like I kind of like I get the work out of the way first, and then I can tackle the things that require a little bit more,
Finesse.
whichever side of the brain is the creative one, the right side, the left side, I forget. If I need to put together sales pitches on the advertising side that require a little bit of thought, or I need to, if I'm working on a piece for Metal Sucks that's a bit more involved, or some other management stuff, things that are a little bit more involved. I like to warm up with the like work to just kind of get in the
Yep.
mode,
Yep.
and then attack the day the best I can from there.
So just as one follow-up to that, what do you actually consider to be your primary job out of those three, if you consider one thing to be your primary job?
Well, income wise, it's Metal Sucks.
Really?
Um,
Oh,
uh,
Blast Beat.
oh
Okay.
yeah, by a lot. Oh,
Oh,
okay. Well, yeah. So I was gonna say, I mean, Blast Beat and Metal Sucks are so closely intertwined
fair.
that, if we were to, I mean, it's also kind of a technicality,
Yeah.
because the money flows from Blast Beat. The money flows into Blast Beat, and then it flows out of Blast Beat into Metal Sucks and Metal Injection and Lambgoat and PRP, the other sites that we do. So it's hard to kind of quantify like where it really comes from in a way, but like the without the content of Metal Sucks, Blast Beat would be worthless to me, if that makes sense. Like Blast Beat is the economic engine, but that's useless without a place to put those ads. And like if you were to look at my tax return, you would see most of the money coming from Metal Sucks. And Blast Beat, we have to keep it going. We have to keep the money coming in. But in many ways, it's kind of self-sustaining at this point.
Okay, it's interesting.
And then management, it depends. For many years, I earned little to nothing on management. I've told this story before, probably even on the last episode of this podcast, but on the entire first Rivers of Nile record, the entire commission that I earned for 2 years of work, like album promotion, touring, everything, I just spent it all on a giant print of the album cover from Dan Seagrave to like hang it, and like that was it. And that was honestly the best investment and use of that money, but it's management is a lot of work up front for not a lot of return. And it's not until recently that I've actually been able to earn some real money from the management side. But then again, going back the other way, in 2020 and 2021, there's no touring. So there's very little for me to commission as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. But one more question for Ben before you go, Corey, if that's okay.
Oh, no, go for it.
Okay. So just to wrap up just on that. So basically with Metal Sucks then as being the driving force behind Blast Beat, well, for ads, I guess. So how do you maybe I'm kind of going into the ad question already. Sorry, Corey.
No, you're totally
good. Good pivot. Very, very nice.
It is a good pivot.
Good pivot.
I am right now accidentally, I realized. But okay, so if Blast Beat is like the main income driver for like Metal Sucks, and you guys also have the other different sites beneath you, how does it kind of work with the divvy up, I guess? Like, do you guys do all the ads across all those platforms, or is it primarily Metal Sucks and then the other guys get a little, like, how does that work? I guess is one.
Well, it's important to note that Metal Injection is the other big site in the network. And the guys who own Metal Injection are also owners of Blast Beat. Although Blast Beat does not own Metal Injection or Metal Sucks, which is an important distinction that many people confuse. But and then of course also Lambgoat and PRP are sort of like the next tier traffic wise of sites in the network, also very significant sites. But the way it works, speaking strictly from a banner ad standpoint, is we have complex software that runs on a web server, and its job is to figure out when the banners get displayed where they do. And essentially the way it works is that if you have a pie, the pie is divvied up into slices proportional to the amount of traffic that each site gets.
I see.
And that's all done automatically behind the scenes, updating in real time by the millisecond, changing all the time based on traffic patterns and delivery needs of each ad, whether they're targeted or not, and so on and so forth. So the biggest sites in the network get the most money just because they get more traffic.
Yep. Cool.
And that's, and I mean, if you were to like zoom out and make the pie the entire internet, then it would be the same. It would still be, you'd still be seeing the biggest sites getting the most banner ads because they have the most traffic. So it's basically just like a little metal mini version of the internet.
Corey, did you not say like one time about, like there was something about ads that you had mentioned about banner ads that I thought you wanted to ask Ben, or did I totally imagine that?
I think you might be imagining that.
Okay.
But no, my question on the ads, just to get started, like for newer bands, there are so many different ways to run ads: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, obviously Blast Beat. What do you think is the most like effective starting point for somebody who's still small, just getting their feet wet with ads, probably don't have a grand to drop on, you know, a banner ad or something through Blastbeat? What do you think is the most effective way for them to just get started in adding and advertising their band?
Well, you may disagree with me on this, and I certainly welcome your input and would like to hear it. But I think if you're a band at that level, you really shouldn't be spending money on advertising. Like I think you should be focusing on songwriting and performing first and foremost. And once you feel that you know your band is at a good level, maybe ready to release an album, I think you should focus on PR. I think you should focus on getting a cool music video, a good photographer, social media strategy. And then I think advertising would probably be the lowest on that list for me.
I actually don't disagree with you on that at all, because without all of that quality content that you just mentioned, no, not really. Without all that quality content that you just mentioned, the music videos, the social media presence, what are you advertising?
Right, exactly. And just like, why are you spending that money? You know, like I don't think, you know, and I like somebody who makes my living from advertising, like 99.5% separate from the management stuff, just speaking on the website. Like I tell bands all the time that like occasionally we'll have a local, you know, independent band come with $1,000, $2,000. And I'm just like, guys, like, don't spend that money on advertising. You're throwing it away. This may be sort of an old school attitude, which is, you know, I think maybe where you might, Corey, have a differing opinion, but advertising traditionally is kind of a crapshoot. You know, you're just like putting stuff out there and hoping that it makes an imprint with people for some nebulous future result. Now, advertising has obviously evolved quite a bit since the 1950s, or even just in the last 10 years, where you can measure return on investment and, you know, and view time and engagement and, you know, like all these things, and you can see real-time results. But I don't know. I think it's just like, I think it's just not productive to get too caught up in that stuff when you're when you're just coming up as a band, because you should really just be focusing on other things. Like I think like any gains you're making in those areas are probably so incremental that they're not really going to move the needle compared to what, say, a great fucking song would, or a really cool music video. You know, and I just think, and you know this, you can spend hours tinkering with that stuff, with the ad stuff.
That's,
you know,
that's my bread and butter. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Is I tinker with ads all day long.
Yeah. So, you know, and I mean, that's why I said, you know, I think you might disagree. Like, I wonder what your thoughts are on that for a band at, say, like Achiavel's level.
So the ads that we've been running have been really, really effective because the content itself is really effective. I'm using content advertising, not, you know, where it's like a 15-second clip and then it says click here to do the full video. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing something that's not, I don't think a lot of people do. I set up their entire music video as an in-stream ad. So it'll pop up after another music video, just like it would, you know, normally on YouTube, where the next music video starts streaming. Instead, it's Achiavel's video. And those have been really effective because I can really dial in the audience. And I've gotten it to the point where over 60% of the people who see that ad stay and watch at least 2 minutes and 15 seconds of the video. So they're staying and checking it out. So you have to take a modern approach. It's not the same as what it used to be, where you're just blasting things out there. You've really got to dial it in and find that specific audience for it to have any kind of efficacy.
Mm-hmm. So like, how do you measure, like, what's your ultimate end measure of success? Like, is it just the watch time, or like what are you hoping to accomplish that you are able to measure or not measure?
It depends on the call to action. So if I have my call to action set to subscribe now, my end goal will be how many subscribers did we get, or my result, by whether or not it was successful will be how
Mhm.
many subscribers did we get, or if it's pre-order the album now, how many sales did we make off of this. So it really depends on what I'm telling people to do with my call to action on how effective it was.
That's cool. And do you see pretty good results on subscriptions, for example?
Yeah, actually their subscriptions have increased to the point where YouTube can no longer measure it. It just says greater than 999%.
999% of what?
Increase over the previous 28-day period.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. And it's same with like Spotify. They've increased by, what was it, 16 times?
At least.
So yeah, at least
Mhm.
16 times now since I
Right.
started.
I mean, part of
But
that could be like sort of where I'm going with this is like that could also be just part of having sick music videos and good
Exactly.
songs, they're just gaining fans organically.
Yeah, it's a combination of the two. Spotify is driven by content almost entirely. Like their Spotify spikes as soon as they have content that's new and fresh and awesome.
Mhm.
But they also have the whole package. You guys you gotta keep in mind too, right? Like they got the PR, they also have the sales stuff processes in place. They also have the ads. So it's not like necessarily just, it's like you're saying, Ben, if they were just focusing on ads,
It wouldn't work.
it wouldn't work, but they have the PR and they have the sales process.
Right. Yeah, you
Video.
got to have everything. Yeah,
It's-
that's the overall point is like
Yeah.
you got to have everything working in place
Yeah.
at the same time for advertising to
Exactly.
be effective. Yeah.
And that's where I agree with you that ads should come last. You should have your image, you should have your socials, you should have your music videos, your album, your PR, you should have all of those in place and then start advertising. Otherwise, you're advertising something that's either subpar or just nothing in general.
Yeah.
You have to have everything in place and then start pushing people.
Yeah, or you're just advertising into a vacuum,
Exactly.
you've got nothing to support it. Now, I mean, certainly there are examples where advertising can be very effective from just a pure ROI perspective. Like I know some of those guys who do like online guitar courses and stuff like
Mhm.
that, just like they've got that shit dialed in, where they know if they put X amount of dollars into whether it's YouTube, Facebook, and they have like A, B, C, D different versions of the ad, and then they go with the best one. They like they've got the whole formula just completely dialed in. They've got a whole funnel of how they do it and acquire users, and they're very, very good at it. But for something that's more on the creative side and subject to opinion and emotions like music is, I don't think the same logic really applies.
It doesn't, but it also kind of does. I test all of the audiences. When I'm placing an ad, I have different sets of audiences, different placements, and different criteria that I'm testing against to see which one works best. Who likes this video when it pops up into their YouTube the most. So I can then turn off the ones that aren't working and put more money into the ones that are. So all of the testing can still be done even when it's creative because there's still a way to measure that audience. It's just whether or not you want to take the time and have the investment to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like it's not as to Curtis's point, you need to have all the other stuff going. Yeah, because it is such a more of a creative endeavor.
It is, and it's not as straightforward either, because it's like you said the guitar courses, you can type in people who are interested in guitar courses are the ones I want to target. But when it's something creative, it's a whole different mindset you have to get into.
For sure.
Yeah. I have a question about print, if you want to talk about that in a minute, Ben. But before we do, I just putting that out there so I don't forget. Before we do, so have you ever seen it happen where a band has done it, like you said, they didn't have all the elements, but they just went for the straight ads and it did work by chance?
No.
No. Okay.
I've never seen that happen. No.
Okay. Cool.
You know, and sometimes we will get those bands that come to us, and you know, it's just like usually it's people who, you know, maybe a little bit older, like in their 30s or 40s, you know, and they've got secure jobs and they have money, and they've had that conversation where they're like, we're going to spend whatever, $5,000, $10,000 on this album campaign. And some of that is earmarked for advertising, and they'll do the campaign, and you know, they'll pay right away from some bank account in like the Canary Islands or some shit, you know, and like this has actually you know, and it's just like, all right guys, you know, if this is what you want to do, sure, you know. And then those are the same bands, sometimes you see them buy on to tours. And that never works either. If anyone's listening and has some band or agent pitching them on buying on, don't do it. Because
that was actually something I wanted to ask you about, because that's a topic that Curtis and I have run into a couple of times. And so that's interesting. I'm glad you brought it up.
Sure, let's go there.
No, I just, yeah, I thought it was don't do it. No, see, because I personally don't like that plan either. It just, I'm not very experienced in the whole thing, but it just seems like a bad idea to me. But I know of at least one band that is probably going to buy onto a tour. And yeah, so all of your thoughts on that are welcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, there are examples where that kind of thing can be effective. Like I'm thinking of all the Ozfest tours where, you know, where like bands or their labels had to pay a certain amount for the band, or commit to a certain amount of promotion in monetary value for the tour. And those tours were massively successful and launched tons of bands' career, but those were signed bands, you know, for the most part, and who had all the machinery that Curtis was speaking about, the label, the PR, the agent. They're not just some band, you know, like hoping that if they open, you know, the first of 5 on an Exodus tour, that they're going to be the next big thrash band. You know what I mean? Like that just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, there are always going to be certain circumstances where it makes sense. Like one thing I'm thinking about, and maybe it wasn't a buy on, but I'm pretty sure it was, when In This Moment toured with Ozzy, and that kind of like got them broken out. But again, like you said, they had a label, they already had a PR machine going, they had the entire thing going. So I guess the moral of the story is, unless you have that backup, it doesn't make sense, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know about that tour in particular, but I you know, you might have knowledge of it, but I would point out that Blasco, Ozzy's bassist, is In This Moment's manager, or was, I believe, at that time. So that may have been how they got that gig, or it may have been a buy on on top of that. You know, I don't know. But yeah, like the point is, like you said, that, yeah, they had a label, they had everything, they already probably had a hit or two, you know, at that time. And it's a little bit different than just some band saying like, if only we can play for people, then that will be the big break for us, you know, and that's the big illusion there, right? You know, is like the system is unfair, and the only way to crack it is to throw money at it. And that will put us in front of an audience, and the audience will like us.
Yeah, it's like that band. I heard a story about some band paying, I think it was like $1 million to open for Crew, is what I think it was. I think it was Motley Crue or something like that. And it was just like, nothing happened after that. I think it was Motley Crue, but like, kind of stupid. So then how does a band get onto a big tour or a good tour without a buy on then? Because that seems to be the main thing nowadays, is buy on. I want to hear your perspective on that.
Who's saying that's the main thing?
Well, not a main thing, but I mean, let me rephrase what I'm saying here. There's
a common thing.
A common thing is for people.
It is. Who's doing that?
I'll tell you. I'll tell you after the phone call that I've seen this, but
okay.
I know of several.
I've seen it.
They're not like personal people that I know. I just know that they've done it.
Yeah.
Right. And just out of curiosity, or have any of those bands found success from that? No, of course.
No, not at all. Which is why I don't like it.
But in any case, how does a band get onto tours? Well, that's an important role of a manager. Bringing it back to the beginning of this conversation, is it's a manager's job to go out there and network with other managers, hype their band up. We have an album coming out in the fall. Throw the Spotify numbers, the YouTube numbers, the past history or whatever, and convince someone, whether it's another manager or a booking agent, to get that slot. And this is where relationships come in. This is where relationships have value. Managers, booking agents, people at record labels can be really helpful in getting their bands onto tours with acts on the label. Although they don't necessarily make those decisions, they can be very helpful in helping to facilitate that. So, I mean, it's really, it's a networking game in a lot of ways.
And having your shit together and all the pieces in place, again, is what it comes back to.
For sure.
Yeah, because no matter how much money you throw at it, if you don't have all of your ducks in a row prior to going out on the road, prior to spending on ads, it's just going to bomb, no matter how much money you throw at it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So unless you had a follow-up on that, Corey, I wanted to ask another one.
Nope. Go for it.
Okay, so next aspect of management. So for touring, let's just finish up the touring conversation before I go to the next one. So how do we get back from ads to touring? We fucking have been leaping back and forth.
It's all related, Curtis. Everything. It's all the same.
It's all part of the same web.
I know. I just realized I missed my earlier question I was going to ask you. So I'm going to go back to my earlier, otherwise I'm going to forget it. Back to ads. So just briefly, I want to hear your thoughts about bands buying print ads.
Right. Just bands independently themselves buying a print ad.
Yeah, because how do I want to put this? Should a band be investing in print ads, in your opinion? Because there's a lot of magazines, especially in Europe, where they won't cover a band unless they invest in an ad. It's a common thing in Europe, not as common in the United States and Canada, but it's very common there. I personally don't think it's worth it most of the time, but I want to hear what your thoughts are. I know you're a digital ad guy, but I just want to hear what
I mean, like from a purely promotional perspective of is this ad going to get people to pay attention, potential fans to pay attention to my band? I could also, you could send me that $2,000 and I would spend it on toilet paper or any number of other things, and it would be very valuable, more valuable than buying that ad. But you made an important point that there are certain publications that will only cover you if you spend money. Yep. And I don't really know how to answer that question because I'm not experienced in it. We don't do it that way. I'm certainly aware that there are publications who do, or they'll do it in, I mean, on one side, there's like publications who say like, if you pay us $500, we'll review your record. Yep. And then there, which I think is how it's done in Europe fairly commonly. And then there's the US way, which is like, if you buy an ad, then we'll write about your band. And certainly there are print publications who do that. Or versions of that. And I mean, look, I guess it comes down to whether we think press is going to make or break a band. I think at this point in 2021, press is not going to make or break a band. 10 years ago, different story. Yep. But I understand that bands could want to play that game and maybe there's some value there, but I don't think that it's necessary.
I agree. I think it's more of a vanity thing a lot of the time, especially with
Big time.
Old, where it's like, oh, my band is in print. And you're like, well,
it's important.
Yeah. It's like, I can show my mom, I can show everyone else that I got in print, but one thing, I don't know if you've ever saw, but it was like, I think it was last year, I did a poll to ask how many people had actually read a print music magazine in the last 30 days. And I think it was like 200 people answered, and it was like 3 people had actually read.
Wow. Right. Well, I mean, I would point out maybe there's some bias there with you're doing this on a digital platform, conducting this poll.
That's
Um,
that's a good point.
but but I mean, I think your overall point still stands that I mean, look, like I think the print publications do a great job,
Same,
and I think they're a valuable part of our community.
same.
But if you're asking specifically about whether a band should spend money,
Yep.
I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. I think
Yeah,
if it's from a label perspective and it's coming from a bigger budgetary pot, there
I
might
agree.
be some value there. In addition to the labels know well that their dollars help keep those magazines alive,
That's true.
and they're helping out.
True.
And that's worth it. But from an individual band perspective, it's much harder to see it for me.
That was a very diplomatic answer and perfect.
Diplomacy for the win.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I do like, I mean, I don't personally read any print mags at this point because, I just don't have the time, with like 2 kids. And I mean, and also just because I do this stuff for a living, and like when I unplug, like I need to just not think about metal, like I don't want to read about more metal when I step away from my desk. But every now and then I'll pick up like a decibel feature, and I'll read like one of the longer features they do, and it's great stuff, and that serves an important role in the metal community for sure.
Well, the one thing that I feel just to follow up for print versus digital advertising, what I like is that you can actually have the person click through to make a sale right off the bat, versus with an ad in a print magazine, you don't get that immediate ability to click through and be able to purchase right off the bat. You have to make sure the person has to put down the magazine, go to their phone, type in the web address, and the whole 9 yards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's personally why I that's the main reason why I feel like it's less effective, even despite the fact that people are seeing the name. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, though, like digital ads aren't remarkably effective from that perspective either.
Fair.
Like we're talking about on Blast Beat.
Yeah.
If we see a click rate, and it varies by size and location and stuff, but like let's just say if we see a click rate of 0.3% on a campaign, that's amazing.
That is really good.
That's amazing.
On banner ads.
Yeah, and of those people, we lose the ability to track once the click happens, but of those people, if they make a sale, that, like what percentage of those 0.3, like, it's some infinitesimal, like you're never going to make your investment back on a banner ad campaign, or it's very rare, I should say, so I think it's important not to get trapped into like digital banner ads are better than print ads because you can track results. I think of it more as like a nice bonus.
Fair. Well, what type of digital ad do you think is the best to do then, out of curiosity?
If I were a band or a label, I would be putting more dollars into social media for sure. I say somebody who stands to lose money from saying this. So, but it's fine. We're just being honest here. I would certainly Facebook and YouTube, I think, would be the primary places. And I would look into, I mean, this is getting harder now with the recent changes with, Apple on the devices and the ad tracking, but, I'd look into certain retargeting efforts, see what's available there through some of the larger networks. Google for sure, I would be involved with. I think I would earmark some for the traditional banner ad route, because I think there is value there in being able to present a larger digital canvas and that the opportunity for messaging and brand awareness that affords.
Mm-hmm.
Fair. Corey, you got anything?
No, I agree on the social media aspect. I find that it's so much easier, well, not necessarily easier, but more effective to really target a specific audience that is going to be engaged with whatever it is that you're advertising. Like I said, this is my bread and butter, is what I do all day long, is I get inside people's heads. And the primary way I do that is through their social media activity and tracking their interests that way. And then obviously testing everything that you put out there to make sure that you have the most effective campaign that you possibly can. And that
Fair.
way,
Sure.
I mean, getting your cost per view or your cost per click down as far as humanly possible while still maintaining a high percentage of people clicking or viewing your ad. That's the only way to do it, is to keep drilling into people's minds and understanding what it is that they're looking for, that you then have to present to them in that way.
Fair enough. So next thing, unless you got something else, Corey.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Next thing I just wanted to touch upon, just in regards to ads, is so with Blast Beat, do you guys don't handle social media ads at all? Is that correct?
Not in the way that I think you mean.
Okay.
Like occasionally a label will want to utilize our social media platforms to very, very occasionally, like to post like a video clip or something like that for something they're promoting, or like more often the way it's utilized is we'll do, say, like a giveaway, like we'll do a giveaway with E1 where it's a bunch of E1 vinyl and we're posting it on our sites and we're posting it on our social networks also, and it's all kind of like included in one package. But as far as what you mean, I think, as like targeted ad campaigns,
Yep.
we don't do that. No.
Okay, so now next question is about with the giveaways. Can like a regular band buy that, or do you only offer that to labels?
It's up to the sites.
Okay.
It's whatever the site wants to do. Like we can't tell, like, I don't think very many of the other sites really do that sort of stuff.
Fair.
But, like me and Matt would decide for Metal Sucks whether it's something we want to do. Rob and Frank would decide for Metal Injection. It just depends on the label, depends on the band, whether we think it's something we want to get behind or not. I mean, usually we don't even charge for it, like, because usually the benefit of doing a giveaway is email addresses.
Yeah.
Those are very valuable.
Fair. Yeah.
There are examples where, say, like we would do a giveaway and then we would include an email blast and all social networks, and do that, and and maybe charge for it that way. But it wouldn't, like, it doesn't take the form of just a band coming to us and saying like, hey, how much is it for a giveaway? We don't really do it like that.
Okay. And then I had a question about the advertorials. So how do you guys kind of pick and choose who does those? Because you guys have had a few in the past, and I'm curious how they are figured out.
Like which kinds of ones?
Like the ones about the gambling and stuff like that. I've seen
Yeah.
stuff. I mean,
I mean, the way I look at it is like, as we were talking about earlier, some publications just straight up charge for coverage.
Yeah.
Some publications in the US don't charge for coverage, but will heavily strong arm a label or a band into an ad buy in exchange for coverage.
Oh,
we do neither of those things.
Yeah.
So if you see a post about an online casino, it's paid for. And if you see an article about a band on our site, it's not paid for. So like, I personally would rather accept $500 for some stupid casino post and just like, and know that it's, have people know what it is and probably not read it, frankly, than, like post about some band and there'd be doubts about where our money is coming from. Because like the stuff, like the casino stuff, that's an SEO thing. Those companies don't care about the content. They don't care whether anyone even reads it. It's just whether it gets indexed by Google with a link to their site that helps increase their search rankings for people searching for particular terms. That's all it is. Yeah. That's all that's what that is.
Do you quality check that though? Or does it just like, you'll just,
I mean, we turned stuff down. Yeah. I had to turn one down this week. That was like, just like male enhancement pill. Like it was just like this like, thing. And it was a lot of money too, but it was just like, sorry guys, like this is not gonna work. but I mean, like the ones that do go up, we give them kind of a quick once over or try and make them coherent and, and just move them along to the next.
Fair enough. Do you got a follow-up, Corinne?
No, that all makes sense to me. Did you have another follow-up? I feel like you always do.
Well, I don't really. I kept waiting for you.
And did you want to get back to the touring question that you started to ask but did not finish?
Ask now. I'm sorry. I totally.
That always happens.
Yeah.
Always forget what you were going to ask.
Yeah, I forgot. So I think basically the last thing I got for Ben on ads, unless you got something else, is kind of like, so not really ads. How much money do you think a band who already has the PR, they already have like the rest of the marketing machine in place, how much should they be setting aside to do a proper ad campaign to help make the album successful?
That's a really hard question to answer.
Fair.
Because bands, come from so many different backgrounds and, different socioeconomic groups. And, it's really hard for me to answer without sorting, and they could be at different levels of bands. Like I almost feel like Corey would be better qualified to answer that. But certainly not a lot, I would put the majority of any funds I had earmarked for promoting my band's record into the other things.
Yeah, so like the PR and the other different aspects, sales aspects and stuff first. Fair enough. I think that's all I got. Do you got anything else, Corey?
No, I agree on that last point. The last thing you should be budgeting for is ads, and to make sure that everything else is in place and to only really start spending on them if you have the surplus cash to do so. And that you've gotten everything else set up. So, your socials, your web shop, your PR, making sure your image is dialed in, all of that needs to be done first.
Yeah. And the main point, I think, is the thing Ben brought up at the beginning, is you got to have quality music in order for anything to work. Because if you have the PR and you have the advertising, it's not going to work if your music sucks.
Exactly.
Right. And I mean, that's tricky though, because every band thinks they have quality music, right? But to the extent that where are you putting your effort?
Yeah.
Is it on tinkering with YouTube ads or writing more songs?
Yeah.
It should put into writing more songs and fine tuning those songs, and all the other things, like rather than worrying about ads, which should come later in the process and should not be as big of an emphasis.
Agreed 100%. Because we've also all seen those bands that have a lot of cash to burn and they'll just throw all this money and then it still goes nowhere because they just suck. They're not very good. They don't.
Or they're mediocre. That's the big, and I think we talked about this last time. Like that's the biggest problem of all is like, okay, this thrash band, pretty good, but sounds just like 50 other thrash bands. Like what's why would anyone care?
Yeah, exactly. What else do we got, Corey?
I think that's it. And this has actually been a decently long podcast. There's a lot of good information in here for people. I think you didn't even realize what time it was, did you, Curtis?
No, I didn't. I just looked right now what time it was.
It's always great talking to Ben. You have so much information and it's so helpful to people. So definitely going to have you back.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'll come back anytime you guys want. Just let me know.
Okay, so tomorrow at 3:00 in the morning.
2:00. We're all in. So Ben, do you have anything you want to plug before we end off?
Way to put me on the spot, Curtis.
I'm sorry, man.
He does it to me too all the time. If it makes you feel any better.
It does.
I'll plug Metal Sucks for you. Go to metalsucks.net because
sure.
Follow Ben. I think it's at Vince Neilstein on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that's right.
And I don't know your Instagram handle, but it's probably at Vince Neilstein as well, I'm assuming.
Nah, I don't think anyone's gonna want to follow that. It's just like kid pics and stuff. That one isn't so metal.
Okay. Then follow him on Twitter at Vince Neilstein. And anything else?
Follow me on Vince Neilstein on Twitter. A lot of content about Robin, wacky metal band photos,
country music,
90s dance pop.
Oh my gosh, I loved the post that you did the other day of the like worst band photos ever. And yes, these are all real. I love that one.
Yeah, that stuff is always always a gold mine for some good
It was
entertainment.
very entertaining, some of them.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, we get that stuff funneled into our inbox daily. We don't even have to try. So
Yeah.
yeah, but well, thanks so much for having me.
So
Yeah.
final words are party on, Corey.
Party on, Curtis. Party on, Ben.
Party